The next time you walk into a grocery store, pay attention. You grab a cart, walk through a few aisles, pick up a couple snacks, maybe a soda, maybe a box of cereal. Nothing unusual. But here's the question. How many of those choices were actually yours? And I don't mean how many things you bought. I mean how many decisions you made completely on your own. Because before you even walked into that store, someone had already spent millions of dollars trying to figure out exactly what ends up in your cart. The colors that catch your eye, the products you notice first, the foods that feel healthy, even the cravings that seem to appear out of nowhere. None of it is random. Now before you say, that's just marketing, you're right, at least at first. But the deeper you go, the harder it becomes to tell where marketing ends and manipulation begins. And that's where things get interesting, because most people think food companies make money by selling food. But what if their real business is influencing behavior? What if the most valuable thing they understand isn't food? What if it's you? Today we're diving into the 7 levels of food industry manipulation. The first few levels might seem harmless. The last one raises a question that's surprisingly difficult to answer. At what point does influence become control? Let's start with level 1. Packaging. Sounds harmless, right? After all, every product needs packaging. Every company needs a logo. Every cereal box needs a design. Nothing controversial about that. Or is there? The next time you're in a grocery store, take a walk down the cereal aisle. You'll see dozens of colorful boxes fighting for your attention. Some look healthy. Some look fun. Some look expensive. And some look like they're made specifically for kids. But here's what's interesting. Most of those boxes are trying to do the exact same thing. Get you to pick them up. Because the moment a product lands in your hands, the chances of you buying it increase dramatically. And food companies know that. In fact, some companies spend millions testing packaging designs before a product ever reaches a store. Not because they're changing the food, but because they're changing your perception of the food. Think about this. Why are so many healthy foods packaged in green? Why do cereal boxes aimed at children use bright colors and cartoon characters? Why do products covered in words like natural, whole grain, and made with real fruit instantly feel healthier? Because packaging isn't just protecting the product. It's communicating something to your brain before you've even read the ingredients. And the crazy part is that most of this happens in seconds. You don't sit there analyzing every color, image, and word on the package. Your brain makes a snap judgment, and companies spend billions trying to understand exactly how those judgments work. Now, is this manipulation? Honestly, probably not. At least not yet. Most people would call this marketing, and they're probably right. But level 1 reveals something important. The food itself isn't always the first thing influencing your decision. Sometimes it's everything wrapped around it. And if a simple box can influence what you buy, what happens when companies start influencing the entire environment around you? That's where level 2 begins. The grocery store trap. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a grocery store for just one thing and somehow left with 10? You needed milk, maybe eggs, maybe bread. That was the plan. 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out. Easy. But somehow your cart keeps getting heavier. A snack you didn't plan to buy. A drink that looked interesting. Something on sale. Something that caught your eye. And before you know it, you've spent twice as much as you intended. Most people blame themselves. A lack of discipline. A bad decision. An impulse purchase. But what if the store was designed for that exact outcome? Because here's something most people never think about. A grocery store isn't organized for your convenience. It's organized for your spending. Think about the products you buy most often. Milk, eggs, bread, the essentials. Now ask yourself, where are they usually located? Almost always at the back of the store. And that's not a coincidence. Because every extra step you take creates another opportunity for something to catch your attention. A colorful package, a special promotion, a limited time offer, product you never intended to buy. The longer you're inside the store, the more chances the store has to sell you something. And once you notice this, you start seeing it everywhere. The milk is in one corner. The bread is somewhere else. The eggs are somewhere else. Instead of grabbing everything in one place and leaving, you're guided through a carefully designed path. A path filled with products competing for your attention every second. But the most interesting part happens right before you leave. The checkout line. Think about what's waiting for you there. Candy, chocolate, chips, soda. Some of the most tempting products in the entire store. And they're sitting just inches away from you. Not while you're rushing through the aisles. Not while you're focused on shopping. But at the exact moment you're standing still with nothing to do except look around. And that's when something fascinating happens. By the time you've finished shopping, your brain is tired. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. You've spent the last 30 minutes making choice after choice after choice. What to buy, what not to buy, which brand, which flavor, which size. And as your mental energy drops, resisting temptation becomes harder. Suddenly that candy bar doesn't seem like a big deal. That soda doesn't seem so unnecessary. That little treat feels earned. And stores know it. Now, does this mean grocery stores are secretly controlling your mind? No, not even close. But it does reveal something important. The environment around you influences your decisions far more than most people realize. And if companies can influence where you walk, what you see, and what catches your attention, then the next question becomes much more interesting. What if they could influence what you crave? Because that's exactly where level 3 begins. Engineered cravings. Up until now, we've talked about things you can actually see. The packaging, the store layout, the products placed in front of you. But what if the most powerful influences are the ones you never notice at all? Think about the last time you craved something. Maybe it was pizza. Maybe it was a bag of chips. Maybe it was ice cream late at night. Whatever it was, the craving probably felt like it came from you. A random thought, personal desire, a simple decision. But what if it wasn't that simple? Because for decades, food companies have been studying a question worth billions of dollars. How do you make people want more? Not like a product. Not enjoy a product. Want more. And the answer led them deep into the science of human behavior. You see, food isn't just fuel. Food is information. Every bite sends signals to your brain. Signals that influence pleasure, satisfaction, and desire. And food scientists learned something incredibly important. The human brain doesn't crave calories. Craves rewards. That's why some of the most successful food products ever created weren't designed by chefs. They were designed by teams of researchers, psychologists, and food scientists trying to discover the perfect combination of sweetness, saltiness, and texture. A combination that would keep you coming back for another bite. And another. And another. In the food industry, there's actually a term for this. The bliss point. The exact balance of ingredients that creates the strongest feeling of pleasure without becoming overwhelming. Too little sugar and a product feels boring. Too much sugar and it becomes unpleasant. But somewhere in the middle is a sweet spot. A formula carefully engineered to make you want just one more bite. And once companies discovered this, the game changed. Because they weren't just selling food anymore. They were optimizing desire. Think about potato chips for a second. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to stop after just one? That's not necessarily a lack of willpower. Many snack foods are intentionally designed to create what researchers call vanishing caloric density. The food melts quickly in your mouth, making it harder for your brain to accurately judge how much you've eaten. The result? You keep reaching back into the bag. Not because you're still hungry, but because your brain hasn't received a strong signal to stop. And suddenly, something starts to become clear. The products around us aren't competing to satisfy us. They're competing to keep us engaged, to keep us eating, to keep us coming back. Now, does this mean every food company is secretly manipulating your brain? No, but it does reveal a major shift. At level 1, companies influenced what you noticed. At level 2, they influenced your environment. But at level 3, they began influencing something much more powerful. Your cravings. And if companies can influence what you crave, then what happens when they learn how to influence your habits? That's where level 4 begins. Engineering habits. By now, we've seen how food companies can influence what catches your attention, where you walk, and even what you crave. But cravings are temporary. Habits are permanent. And that's what makes Level 4 so powerful. Think about your morning routine for a moment. How many of the foods you eat every day are decisions you actively make? The coffee you drink, the cereal you pour into a bowl, the snack you grab during work, the soda you reach for in the afternoon. Most of us like to think we're making those choices consciously. But are we? Because the real goal isn't to convince you to buy a product once. The real goal is to make that product part of your routine. A single purchase is valuable. A habit is priceless. When a behavior becomes a habit, something fascinating happens. You stop thinking about it. You stop comparing alternatives. You stop making a decision at all. You simply repeat what you've done before. And food companies understand this better than almost anyone. That's why so much marketing isn't focused on the food itself. Instead, it's focused on creating associations. Drink this when you're happy. Eat this while watching a movie. Start your morning with this. Celebrate with this. Reward yourself with this. Over time, the product becomes connected to a moment, a feeling, or a routine. And eventually, that connection becomes automatic. Think about movie theaters and popcorn, birthdays and cake, coffee and mornings. For many people, those combinations feel completely natural. But they didn't appear out of nowhere. They were reinforced over decades through advertising, repetition, and culture. The more often a behavior is repeated, the more automatic it becomes. And once something becomes automatic, it's incredibly difficult to change. This is why some food brands spend billions of dollars every year simply reminding you that they exist. Not because you've forgotten them, but because repetition strengthens habits. The goal isn't always to make you buy something today. Sometimes the goal is to make sure that when the moment comes tomorrow, next week, or next month, their product is the first thing that comes to mind. And that's where the real power of habits begins. Because once a habit is established, you no longer need to be convinced. You don't need a special offer. You don't need a discount. You don't even need to see an advertisement. The behavior starts running on autopilot. Now, does this mean every habit you have was created by a corporation? Of course not. But it does reveal something important. The battle isn't always over what you buy today. Sometimes it's over what you'll automatically buy tomorrow. And if companies can influence your habits, then the next question becomes even more uncomfortable. What happens when they learn how to influence your biology? That's where Level 5 begins. Shaping an entire generation. Up until now, we've focused on the individual. Your attention, your cravings, your habits, your biology. But what happens when these same strategies are applied not to one person, but to millions? Because at some point, the food industry stopped competing for customers one at a time. It started shaping culture itself. Think about the foods that feel completely normal today. Giant sodas, fast food on every corner, snacks available 24 hours a day, portion sizes that would have seemed unbelievable just a few generations ago. Most of us never question these things because they've always been part of our world. But that's exactly the point. The most powerful changes don't feel like changes at all. They feel normal. Take portion sizes as an example. Over the past several decades, many restaurant meals, soft drinks, and snack products have become significantly larger. Not overnight. Slowly. Gradually. Year after year. And because the change happened so slowly, most people never noticed. What once felt large became normal. What once felt excessive became expected. And what once felt unusual became standard. The same thing happened with convenience. Food became faster, easier, more available, and eventually entire lifestyles began forming around that convenience. Drive-thrus, delivery apps, grab-and-go meals, food available at almost any time, almost anywhere. Again, none of this is inherently bad. Convenience can be incredibly useful. But every change comes with consequences. Because the easier something becomes, the more often people tend to do it. And the more often people do it, the more normal it feels. Then there's advertising. For decades, food companies have spent billions of dollars placing their products into television shows, sporting events, movies, social media feeds, and nearly every corner of daily life. The goal isn't always to make you buy something immediately. Sometimes the goal is much bigger. To make a product feel familiar. To make a brand feel trusted. To make a behavior feel normal. And once enough people adopt that behavior, it becomes part of the culture. The next generation grows up surrounded by it, accepting it, expecting it, never questioning where it came from. And that's when influence reaches an entirely different level. Because you're no longer influencing a decision. You're influencing what's considered normal. And there may be no form of influence more powerful than that. Now, does this mean food companies created every aspect of modern food culture? Of course not. Consumers shape culture too. Technology shapes culture. Society shapes culture. But there's no denying that the food industry has played a major role in defining what millions of people eat, how they eat, and what they consider normal. And that brings us to the final level. Because after everything we've seen, one question still remains. Where exactly is the line between influence and manipulation? That's where level 7 begins. The line nobody can see. Throughout this video, we've been climbing a ladder. At level 1, companies influenced what you noticed. At level 2, they influenced the environment around you. At level 3, they learned how to influence cravings. At level 4, they became part of habits. At level 5, they learned how to work with human biology. At level 6, they helped shape what entire generations consider normal. And now we arrive at the final level. Not a strategy. Not a technique. A question. Because after everything we've seen, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. None of these levels force anyone to do anything. No one is being dragged into a grocery store. No one is being forced to buy a bag of chips. No one is being forced to order a soda. The choice is still yours. At least that's what most people would say. But here's where things become complicated. If a company spends billions of dollars studying your attention, your emotions, your habits, your cravings, and even your biology, and then uses everything it learns to influence your decisions, how much of that choice is really independent? Where exactly is the line? Because influence isn't inherently bad. Parents influence their children. Teachers influence their students. Friends influence each other. Every advertisement you've ever seen is designed to influence you in some way. Influence is part of life. But manipulation feels different. Manipulation happens when influence becomes invisible. When you don't realize it's happening. When the person being influenced believes they arrived at the decision entirely on their own. And that's what makes this conversation so difficult. Because there isn't a clear moment where marketing suddenly becomes manipulation. There isn't a giant red line that companies cross. Instead, there's a gray area. A space where psychology, business, science, and human behavior all overlap. And that's where the modern food industry operates. Some people will look at everything in this video and say, it's just business. Others will look at the exact same facts and say, it's manipulation. And maybe the most interesting part is that both sides can make a compelling argument. Because the truth isn't as simple as good versus evil. The food industry didn't create human cravings. It learned how to understand them. It didn't create human habits. It learned how to shape them. It didn't invent human psychology. It learned how to use it. And perhaps that's the real lesson. The greatest form of influence isn't forcing people to do something. It's creating an environment where they willingly do it themselves. An environment so normal, so familiar, so invisible, that most people never stop to question it. Which brings us back to the question we started with. The next time you walk into a grocery store, the next time you reach for a snack, the next time a craving suddenly appears out of nowhere, ask yourself something. Was that decision entirely yours? Or was someone helping make it for you? And maybe that's the one question every food company hopes you never ask. Whether you see these tactics as smart business or manipulation is a decision I'll leave to you. But one thing is certain. The food industry understands human behavior better than most people realize. It understands what captures our attention, what shapes our habits, and what keeps us coming back for more. The goal of this video wasn't to tell you what to eat or what to believe. It was simply to help you see the system a little more clearly. Because once you understand how influence works, you start noticing it everywhere. And once you see it, you can't really unsee it. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden world of food, subscribe to Food Anatomix for more. Thanks for watching.